The sweat poured heavily down Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's face, but it wasn't the sweat of a fight, of a violent fall in the ring, or of the colossal strength required to lift a hundreds-of-pounds opponent before thousands of frenzied fans. No, it was a different kind of sweat, a sweat that came from the soul, from the invisible weight he carried on his shoulders. Alone in his dressing room, after yet another overwhelming victory that solidified his legend, he stared at the championship belt on the table. The gold gleamed under the light, but to Dwayne it seemed dull, lifeless, like a trophy that no longer held meaning. The silence of that space contrasted with the shouts of the crowd still echoing outside, and that contrast hurt. He was already more than a champion. He was a myth, an eternal name in wrestling history. But deep down he knew the cycle was complete. The endless routine of training, interviews, flashes, and adrenaline rushes no longer filled him. He was exhausted, drained, and deep down, ready to leave. The ring had given him everything: fame, fortune, respect. But now he wanted something more, something that transcended muscles and charisma. He dreamed of Hollywood, of roles that demanded more than shouts, falls, and explosions. He wanted to be an actor, an artist. He wanted to tell stories. But fear was cruel. Fear of being ridiculed. Fear of being just the wrestling guy trying to act. The press waited for a mistake, for a minimal failure to crush him, to laugh, to declare his artistic death before it even began. He knew he had fans, family, allies, but he also knew that the envious, the vultures, and the cynics were lurking, ready to celebrate his downfall. What to do? What to risk? The ring was a safe fortress, but cinema was wild territory where giants fell daily. The Rock was at his peak, and that's exactly why the decision hurt. Leave at the top or wait for the inevitable decline. If you've ever felt this weight of starting over, this fear of risking the new even when everyone believes you've already won, understand, you are not alone. And if you want to hear more stories that uncover the human side behind fame, stories that speak of courage, failure, and overcoming, take the opportunity and subscribe now. It's thanks to your support that we can keep inspiring narratives like this alive, showing that even giants tremble before the unknown. Suddenly, the dressing room door, which Dwayne was absolutely sure he had locked, creaked softly. The sound echoed like a razor in the silence. He raised his head, expecting to see an assistant, someone from the crew, but what he found froze his entire body. Sitting on the bench right in front of the mirror, with a cigarette dangling from his lips and a gaze that seemed to pierce his soul, was Steve McQueen. Not a photo, not a memory, but the king of cool himself, alive, solid, in his leather jacket, relaxed posture, and an aura that mixed contempt and defiance. Dwayne blinked several times, cold sweat trickling down his temples. This isn't possible," he murmured, his voice failing. "You died, man. Years ago. I must be going crazy. Must be all the blows to the head," he laughed nervously. "My mum keeps telling me to stop this." McQueen, smiling sideways, took an imaginary drag from the cigarette and blew invisible smoke that seemed to weigh in the air. "Ah, Dwayne, in Hollywood, anything is possible, especially when you're about to make the biggest gamble of your life." He crushed the cigarette butt in a non-existent ashtray as if marking a final point, and leaned forward, his eyes flashing with sarcasm. "So the big guy wants to be an actor, is that it? Fighting in the ring is beautiful, I admit. It's physical courage, it's muscle, sweat, and a frenzied crowd. But acting, my dear, acting is stripping the soul bare. It's tearing off that The Rock mask and letting the world see the fragile man behind it." He smiled wryly. "And I warn you, they won't applaud. They'll laugh, they'll doubt, they'll root for your failure." Dwayne swallowed hard, but tried to hold his gaze. McQueen didn't back down. "And now tell me, big guy," his voice came deep, slow, each word like a punch, "do you really want to commit this insanity? Throw away everything you've built to dive into the dirtiest, shark-infested sea that exists? Because Hollywood isn't the ring. The fights there are bloodier. There's no room for amateurs, and when I say amateurs, I'm not talking about actors. I'm talking about men." He paused cruelly, his eyes gleaming with that characteristic venom. "They'll pull your underwear off without taking off your pants, Dwayne, if you know what I mean." He let out a dry, humorless laugh. "And believe me, they'll enjoy it." McQueen leaned back, his shadow heavier than the entire room. "So I ask you, Dwayne, Are you ready to jump into the abyss, even knowing there might be no river below? I made that choice. I lived that war. And I guarantee you, you spend more time regretting than enjoying. Of course, the money comes, the fame, the power, the connections. All of that is real. But underneath, it's rottenness. And it's not because you're big, strong, idolized, that the suits will respect you. On the contrary, they'll use you, bend you, break you. Silence fell like a sentence. Dwayne clenched his fists, his heart pounding. This was no ordinary ghost. It was the personification of the destiny that awaited him. The air in the dressing room felt heavier than any ring Dwayne had ever entered. He ran a hand over his face, feeling the cold sweat trickle down, not from physical exertion, but from the fear McQueen had just torn from him, like pulling a tooth by its root. His deep voice came out trembling, sincere, stripped of the rock persona. I know how to be the action hero, Steve. I know how to be the tough guy, the one who stirs crowds. Here, I play that every day, without fail. But what if they ask for something more? What if they want depth, vulnerability, true pain? What if I don't have that? What if I fall flat on my face on the first try? What will be left of me? McQueen slowly stood up, like a judge about to deliver the final verdict. His footsteps echoed on the dressing room floor as his eyes scanned every photo, every belt, every piece of Dwayne's history. The King of Cool took another imaginary drag from his cigarette and exhaled the invisible smoke before staring at Dwayne as if weighing his soul. You're a legend in here. No one doubts that. But Hollywood, my dear, Hollywood is hell disguised as paradise. There, it's not muscles that count. It's the scars no one sees. Would you be ready to walk through the gates of hell and face the demons of the real world? He leaned in, his shadow even more menacing. Want to know the truth? You don't have it. No one does. I didn't. Brando didn't. Newman didn't. But that's where the magic is. The secret isn't to pretend to be someone else. It's finding a piece of yourself, small, imperfect, painful, within each character, and letting that piece shine on screen. I traded the speed of the tracks and the risk of stunts for the camera. And I tell you, big guy, the biggest race isn't against time, nor against the audience. It's against yourself. McQueen stubbed out his cigarette in the non-existent ashtray and laughed wryly, cruel and sarcastic. Will they talk trash? Will they laugh at you? Will they try to break you right from the start? Oh, you can bet they will. And they'll love doing it. But that's part of it. You need to understand, you can't go in there thinking that being famous here gives you immunity. There, you're not The Rock. You're just another guy, a professional wrestler trying to play actor. Two completely different worlds, and if you go in with arrogance, you'll be swallowed alive. He moved closer, almost whispering, like both a temptation and a threat. You'll have to be humble, but not foolish. You'll have to be cunning, but without appearing too clever. They'll try to trick you, use you, laugh in your face, but if you hold firm, if you survive the first few rounds, if you knock out some of those idiots, then you'll start to make space. You'll earn respect. You'll feel like you're changing the game. But until then, my friend, it will hurt. It will hurt like a teenager dropped into a new school, friendless, mid-semester, and you'll bleed inside. McQueen placed a heavy hand on Dwayne's shoulder, his gaze cold but firm. The difference is you're tough, big guy, you'll endure, and I'll be by your side, even if you don't see me. Because this battle isn't just yours, Dwayne. It's for all of us who have been there and come back to haunt those who dare to enter. Welcome to the next fight. This one, yes, will define you. McQueen's words cut through Dwayne like lightning through a dark night. The silence that followed wasn't one of fear, but of revelation. For the first time he understood. He didn't need to reinvent himself as someone he never was. He didn't need to mold himself to please an audience that might never immediately accept him. He needed instead to expose his truth, his essence, the man behind the giant, the son of Hayward, California, who grew up amidst difficulties, who learned early to transform pain into strength. The tension in his shoulders slowly dissolved, and a new sparkle filled his eyes. The emptiness that had been gnawing at him until then began to transform into purpose. It wasn't about being the new Dwayne, but about being the most authentic Dwayne possible. McQueen, noticing the change, let out a wry, sarcastic, and complicit smile. If you're ready for this war, go for it, big guy. I'll be with you. As soon as you have scripts, chances, any material, I'll be back. It was a pleasure, kid. See you in the chaos. His dry laugh, laden with the King of Cool's typical irony, echoed through the dressing room. My work here is done, he said before standing up. He walked to the door that minutes earlier no one had opened, and his figure began to fade like an old film reel burned by the projector. Before disappearing completely, he left only one phrase suspended in the air. "Remember, kid, life is a sequence of choices. Make yours with passion." When silence returned, Dwayne blinked, took a deep breath, and noticed, on the bench in front of the mirror, lay a pair of classic, unmistakable aviator sunglasses that he knew hadn't been there before. He touched them slowly, as if receiving an amulet, a symbol of a torch passing. In that instant, there was no more room for doubt. In the following months, Dwayne plunged into the toughest battle of his life, the conquest of Hollywood. He called dozens of agents, spent hours in waiting rooms, knocked on doors that closed before his introduction even finished. What he heard most often was cold and direct. Hollywood doesn't need another Rocky Balboa. It was as if each no was an invisible punch, but he remained standing. There were 12 months of silence, slammed doors, and distrust, until, finally, an audition came up. A small chance, almost insignificant in the eyes of others, but for Dwayne, it was the equivalent of a full ring, an opportunity to prove he could fight, no longer with muscles, but with soul. McQueen extended his hand unceremoniously. "Give me that, big guy." Dwayne hesitated for a second, but handed over the script. The legendary actor held it disdainfully, opened the first page and, in less than 20 seconds, snapped it shut, throwing the heavy manuscript onto the table. "Done." "Done how?" Dwayne arched an eyebrow. "You didn't read anything." McQueen let out a dry laugh, took an imaginary drag from a cigarette and pointed to the script's cover. "I read everything. And I'll tell you, weak script, weak role, bordering on ridiculous. This Scorpion King guy looks more like a caricature than a villain. And the worst part, the main actor, Brendan Fraser, well, the kid has some charisma, but he's a rookie trying to play a classic hero. Very weak. But guess what? To start, it's fine. What did you want? Scorsese knocking on your door with an Oscar wrapped in red ribbon? Blockbusters don't just fall into your lap, Dwayne." The Rock scratched his head, incredulous. "You're kidding me. You read that in 20 seconds. No way." McQueen narrowed his eyes, amused. "Oh yeah? Then ask me anything." Dwayne took a deep breath, flipped through the pages, and posed the first challenge. "Okay, what's the most pathetic scene in this script?" Without hesitation, McQueen replied, "The final fight. You against Brendan, transformed into a CGI abomination that looks more like a rubber doll than a scorpion. Ridiculous. The audience will laugh more than they'll be impressed." Dwayne frowned but was still suspicious. Then he asked the second question. "And my character's best line?" McQueen gave a wry smile. "None. The Scorpion King barely speaks. Your impact won't come from words. It'll be from your presence. And guess what? That's perfect for you." Dwayne's eyes widened, and he quickly turned back to the script, flipping to the last page. There it was. The final fight was exactly as McQueen had described, and yes, his character barely had any lines. Dwayne swallowed hard. "But how, man? You didn't even flip 5 pages." McQueen leaned back in his chair, taking another drag from that invisible cigarette. "On this side, my friend, we have gifts. We don't need to flip to read. The whole story unfolds before us." McQueen looked at the script on the table one more time, as if getting rid of a useless weight. "This role is a joke, Dwayne. Look at it. CGI villain, scattered lines any extra could say, grotesque makeup that will barely let you breathe. The whole script is a festival of cliches, the kind critics love to tear apart." He laughed sarcastically, pointing a finger at Dwayne. "But you know why it's perfect for you? Because you don't have to act, you just have to show up. You just have to use your presence, your physique, your intensity. Hollywood doesn't trust you yet, they won't give you Shakespeare right away. They want to see if you can stand in front of the cameras without trembling, if you can hold the screen just with your energy. And that, big guy, you already know how to do in spades." Dwayne stared at him, uneasy. "But what if it's a fiasco? What if I never get real roles?" McQueen shrugged, taking another imaginary drag from the cigarette. "That's where the game comes in, my friend. You need to learn how to turn a small role into something big. I myself started in obscure TV series with no glamour at all. I played dozens of nameless roles, participated in Tales of Wells Fargo, Trackdown, Wanted, Dead or Alive, until I appeared in The Blob, that B-horror movie from 1958. A piece of junk, by the way. But I didn't complain. I used it as a showcase. I showed that even in a mediocre film, I had magnetism. Hollywood is like that. They don't want to see if you're a genius right away. They want to see if you survive. Dwayne crossed his arms, intrigued. How many movies did it take you until things really got going? McQueen stared at his reflection in the dressing room mirror, as if answering himself too. Many. More than you imagine. The Magnificent Seven in 1960 was what truly opened doors, and even then I was still just part of an ensemble. It was only in The Great Escape in 1963 that I became a star. Do you know what that means? That I had to work hard for almost a decade to get there. There's no shortcut, big guy. You want to be an actor? You'll have to swallow bad scripts, play small roles, endure unfair criticism. The secret isn't to start at the top. It's to start. He pointed to the crumpled script on the table. And this, however pathetic it may be, is your beginning. McQueen leaned forward, elbows on his knees, the invisible cigarette between his fingers. His gaze was sharp as a razor, cutting through Dwayne from within. You have an absurd advantage, big guy. In my time, cinema was a knife to the throat. You couldn't just be good, you had to be great. There was no room for error. The competition was inhuman. I shared the screen and box office with titans like Paul Newman, Marlon Brando, James Dean, Burt Lancaster, Kirk Douglas, Gregory Peck, monsters who turned any role into gold. You blinked wrong and you were out. He gave a dry, sarcastic laugh. And today you have Tom Hanks, who already carries the crown of eternal good guy, DiCaprio, who chooses one movie every 5 years as if he were writing the Bible, and a few others lost trying to hold their own. The rest is noise. Cinema has changed, Dwayne. It's no longer about pure art, about Hitchcock or Kazan. It's entertainment. It's spectacle. And in that, my friend, you are a master. McQueen tapped Dwayne's broad chest with his finger, almost dismissively, but laden with truth. Listen to what I'm telling you. You don't need to be a Paul Newman or a Clark Gable. If you try, you'll kill yourself artistically. You'll sink your career and never rise again. Your path is different. Use what you already have. Charisma, humor, physical presence, timing. Tell jokes. Choose light scripts, family films, fun adventures. Be the giant who gets laughs, who entertains crowds, who kids imitate at recess, and parents approve of on the couch. Today's audience doesn't want to think like they did in my time. They want to turn off their brains and be entertained. McQueen took an imaginary puff and smiled wryly, mischievously. If you follow that, you won't just be famous. You'll be the richest of them all, the most sought after. The name studios will beg to have. Hollywood will bow to your way. And who knows? He paused dramatically, looking deep into Dwayne's eyes. Who knows, they might even consider your name for president of this country. Americans have this obsession with putting a famous actor in the White House. You're bigger than a wrestler, Dwayne. You're a brand. And brands, when well used, rule the world. The dressing room fell into absolute silence as McQueen dissolved into smoke, as if he were just a shadow projected by Dwayne's tired mind. But the presence was still there, impregnated in the air like an impossible-to-erase echo. Dwayne took a deep breath, rested his arms on his knees, and stared at the championship belt on the table. For the first time, that golden gleam represented not conquest, but farewell. Okay, Hollywood, let's see if I can pull off another victory. From that moment on, The Rock disappeared. Only Dwayne Johnson remained, the man who would go into the most uncertain fight of his life. In the following months, he plunged in headfirst. He spent hours memorizing lines, studying gestures in front of the mirror, trying to understand how a simple raised eyebrow could say more than 100 punches. He asked for tips from more experienced actors, recorded his own scenes and re-recorded them, until his voice gave out. He knew the role of Matthias in The Mummy Returns was small, even caricatured, but it would be the gateway, and he wouldn't let it slip away. When the film premiered in 2001, the reviews were merciless. Weak script, laughable digital villain, a sequel that didn't hold a candle to the original starring Brendan Fraser, the main actor, already on the rise at that moment. But audiences packed the theaters, and the box office exploded. McQueen had predicted it. Hollywood doesn't care about perfection, it cares about the cash register ringing up millions. The digital scorpion might be a joke, but Dwayne's presence stole attention. And if it made money, it was obvious. The Scorpion King came in 2002, his first big chance to lead a blockbuster. And there, a star was born. McQueen's playbook was followed step by step. Light action films with absolute charisma followed. Welcome to the Jungle, the Game Plan Journey 2, Hercules. The definitive turning point came with Fast and Furious, when he not only entered one of the world's biggest franchises, but made his name synonymous with box office success. Each film seemed to confirm the prophecy. Dwayne Johnson didn't need to be a Shakespearean actor. He was pure entertainment. Audiences laughed, applauded, imitated his lines, and studios filled their coffers. Over time, rumors surfaced. In 2016, a poll showed that millions of Americans would support him for president. Serious newspapers discussed the hypothesis. TV shows debated the Rock phenomenon in politics. He never confirmed, never fully denied. But the mere fact of being considered showed that McQueen was right down to the most improbable detail. Dwayne Johnson became not only Hollywood's highest-paid actor, but one of the most influential men on the planet, balancing films, business, politics, and social media like someone carrying the world's heaviest championship belt. And if you look closely behind the scenes, you can almost see the smoke of an invisible cigarette and hear a sarcastic side smile. Steve McQueen, the improbable mentor, always nearby, and so the prophecy was fulfilled. From an insecure newcomer in The Mummy Returns to a Hollywood titan, Dwayne Johnson walked the path Steve McQueen had described with surgical precision. The digital scorpion became a joke, but also a gateway to a career that defied all expectations. And I ask you, when you watched The Mummy Returns, what did you think of Dwayne's film debut? Did you believe that wrestler could transform into Hollywood's highest-paid and most charismatic actor? And furthermore, which of The Rock's films is your favorite? The one you never tire of rewatching? Now, leaving films aside for a moment, think about your own life. How many times have you found yourself facing a closed door, afraid to risk the next step? How many times have you doubted if you would have the strength or courage to change direction, as Dwayne did by leaving the ring for the film set? And if life gave you the chance to start over in a new area, would you have the courage to face the sharks, even knowing you might fail? And that's why I invite you now to subscribe to the channel. Here we delve deep into these hidden behind-the-scenes stories, revealing not only the successes, but the fears, falls, and sacrifices that shaped great names. Your subscription is what keeps these narratives alive and gives us strength to continue bringing every detail of these journeys that inspire and move. So if you believe that stories like Dwayne Johnson's deserve to be told, click now, activate the bell, and share this video with someone else who needs to hear that fear is not the end, but the beginning of a great transformation.